Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hey,
Hey, everyone, welcome to Analytics W User Group September edition, and welcome back. We were on a 1 month break, and we all are back again with full of energy, and we have some exciting speakers like top of the notch as usual, but they're special as well. So what makes this tug a bit different? So as usual, we are all about analytics in Tableau. We host these events every month, and the subjects are related to mostly Tableau desktop, but we are also going into like aesthetics as well as how we take design into account. So everything that's related to analytics. So that's the whole agenda of our tug. And make sure if you haven't subscribed yet, if you're joining this for the first time, you should scan this QR code for sure. Okay, so let's talk about our tug leaders. First, we have the amazing Annabelle Rincon. She's enjoying life at the moment. Then we have Chimdi Nowasu. He's a database designer and developer and also a founder at Westside Analytics. And then it's me, Prasan, and I'm a senior BI engineer currently working for Emirates NBD. A bit about Annabelle. She is a Tableau visionary and an ambassador and has one of the most coveted certification, that is certified professional. Is all around visual analytics and she's also an enablement lead. Her passions are Tableau, her dog, and chocolate. Of course, she's in Switzerland, so that makes it almost resonate with that. And also, she's leading an enablement webinar series. You should check out her YouTube channel as well as you can scan the QR code that's right. I'll pause for 10 seconds. So if you're trying to scan that, we'll just hold for a moment. So take out your phone, do that as soon as possible. Okay, then it's me. It should be Chimdi, but okay, it's me. So hi, I'm Prasin, and I fell in love with Tableau and DataFam and learned the way of giving back. I started my journey in 2020, also founded Tableau Buddy and VizDiner. Those are initially platforms for learning Tableau, also to get one-to-one mentorship. I'm currently working as a senior BA engineer, and I love community building as well as mentoring. Kind of went over, I don't know how, but it went over like 500 plus data professionals. I've lost the count. And also I have somewhere around 17K plus followers on LinkedIn. And I love cats. I have four cats actually. Maybe I should put all those images as well. And I love food and anime. Can't resist or live without any of them. So three things I can die for. And then we have the amazing Chimney Navosu. He's also a Tableau visionary and ambassador. His journey is amazing, kind of inspiring as well. He's a freelance and contract. He just so many, he serves so many clients in retail, media, higher education, different domains via his own startup that is Westside Analytics. He also fell in love and went all in Tableau in 2020. Again, the high five. We started in 2020, and Viz of the day. So that's just incredible. Maybe if you are coming in the next month, he'll have some more. So that's all about it. He leads Mako Monday and participates in several challenges to improve and share with the data fam. He's a strong believer of functional aesthetics. If you will go to his Tableau Public profile and see those visualization, you will see there is a nice detail about everything he uses. Every single object is nicely detailed. It's not just there for that it is good or it has a function associated with it. So you must check out all of his viz. And fun fact about him is he's a viz junkie and he's currently tied with Kevin Flerlich for most Vizzy awards won ever. Now he can't because he's and he enjoys documentaries, attempting to make melodies on the keyboard and working out. I'm also trying some keyboard. So I got to learn something from you, Chimdi. Yep. Okay, so that's all about us. Some of the Ground rules: please interact as much as you can. Make the chat session as busy as possible. Also, you can ask questions in our Q&A section right there. The chat for all the conversation, use the Q&A for all the questions, because otherwise your questions might get the conversation. People can be really busy. Also, say hi. I can see the energy. That's really nice. And this session is being recorded and it will be available on YouTube as well. And it will be sent by email afterwards. So don't hesitate to like take notes or be very busy about it. It's there. Again, also you can send some love to our speakers on social media, use the hashtag, or you can also tag our Twitter X channel or Twitter channel analytics tag. Now, coming to the agenda, first, we already did the welcome by all of our tag leaders. Then we have aesthetic insights, enhancing data visualization through design inspiration by Damola Ladipo. And then we have the Map Master, the case for adding a GIS to enhance your maps in Tableau by Dennis Cow. And then we have an exciting session on reporting strategy and the drama of dark mode dashboards by Ryan Gensel. So these all three sessions are really power packed with so much information. And feel free to ask your questions. By the end of every session, by the speaker, we'll be addressing all your questions. So don't worry about that. Okay, so now I'll hand over to my brother Chimdi, and we have the first speaker here.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. So today we have our first speaker, Damola Ladipo. Definitely one of my favorite designers in the data fam. For me, if you're design savvy, I'm automatically biased towards you. And Damola is someone who you can check out his profile for a ton of inspirational visits. So a little bit about him. He is a senior database specialist for DevTech Systems at USAID Data Service. He develops dashboards and standalone visualizations. In terms of his Tableau journey, Damola, he joined the community in 2020, kind of around the same time a lot of us did during COVID. And a year after that, he became a featured author. And of course, a year after that, he became an ambassador. So pretty great progression there. And of course, because of the great work that he's always doing, he's currently earned 8 Visit of the Day recognitions. And Tableau Public is a source of inspiration for him, as well as a platform for connecting with the community. Fun fact about Damola, which we're all getting to find out today, he loves baking bread, which, carbs, energy, beautiful, great stuff. His presentation today is going to be aesthetic insights, enhancing data visualization through design inspiration. And so I'm pretty sure as you listen to his talk today, you're going to definitely be curious about how to apply some of the things he shares. And so I definitely encourage you to check out his profile to actually see that he lives what he speaks. So I'm going to stop now. I'm going to pass it off to Damola. Over to you, sir. Give us the goodies.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen. And thanks so much for such a great intro. Really appreciate it. Just get a head nod or a thumbs up that you can all see my screen. And you can hear me?
Yes.
Great. All right. All right, thank you. Welcome everyone to my presentation. As Chimdi said, the presentation is called Aesthetic Insights, Enhancing Data Visualization Through Design Inspiration. So obviously my name is Damola Ladipo. I already got a great introduction for what I do and where I work at USAID for DevTech Systems, creating business dashboards and standalone data visualizations. I'm a 3-time Tableau ambassador. I have the days, just as Chimdi said. little bit more about me. I'm a huge West Ham United fan. I have a poster about West Ham United, actually a data viz about West Ham United right there. If you don't know who West Ham United is, they're the best team in the world. If you do, you probably know I'm not telling the truth, and they're not doing very well right now. That's neither here nor there. And I'm a huge sci-fi movie fan. I love sci-fi books, love sci-fi movies. My favorite sci-fi author is Andy Weir. Favorite book is Hail Mary Project. If you haven't read it and you like sci-fi, highly recommend checking it out. Favorite sci-fi movie, Inception. However, I also love all the Alien franchise. Recently watched the most recent Alien movie. Loved it. Really recommend it. It's amazing. Let's check it out. All right, so learning objectives. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the purpose of this presentation. We're going to go over some key definitions of what is data viz inspiration. What are the benefits of data inspiration? We're going to briefly go over some chart selection tools as the first step in finding inspiration, but also what other types of sources of inspiration can you get outside of just chart selection. Then I'm going to specifically go over some examples of how I found inspiration, who inspired them, what specifically inspired them, and why. And also the importance of providing credit and why that's important. And lastly, creative blocks. All of us experience creative blocks. Imagine at some point what kind of creative blocks can happen and how can we get over that hurdle. So I want to first start here with a great quote about design inspiration. It means drawing inspiration from peers to enrich one's work, driving creativity through remixing and combining ideas. This is an excellent quote from a really great blog. I recommend you all check it out. The blog post is called Inspiration in the World of Data Viz from the Data Fam. Agatha and Preeti, I wrote this blog. Definitely recommend checking it out because I think it captures a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about and more right there. Okay, so I mentioned we talk about the purpose first. So what is the purpose? So in short, overall, we're going to explore design inspiration and enhancing effectiveness in data visualization, how we can use it to grow and learn from others, how it can make our visualizations more engaging, more understandable, and generally just more impactful visualizations. Okay, first thing I mentioned was discussing the definition of what inspiration actually is. This is also a great thing I pulled from that great blog post I mentioned earlier. So inspiration is drawing ideas from various sources. These sources can be from sources, from techniques, from designs to create something new or original by yourself. It can be inspired by colors, charts, layouts, and other things to basically create a product that is an extension of those ideas onto your own work. Giving credit is always important where possible because it's important to show basically a path of where you come up with some of the ideas for your visualization. And overall, inspiration can foster great innovative creativity. Now, on the other hand, what inspiration is not is plagiarism. So plagiarism is copying someone else's work without providing the adequate permissions or proper attribution of who created the original work. It involves replicating designs, charts, layouts with minimal to no changes at all. So posting something that's basically exactly the same as someone else posting without any form of credit or attribution to the author or making any significant changes. So in summary, the difference is that inspiration encourages creativity. It leads to new ideas and original work, while on the other hand, plagiarism copies without significant change. So what are the benefits? Why design inspiration matters? I'm going to go over a few key points here. Obviously, there are more than this, but these are some of the ones I came up with that were the most important. Enhancing creativity and innovation. Drawing inspiration from various sources can open up all kinds of new possibilities to present ways you may have not always considered. It helps you push your own boundaries to identify new and creative approaches you might have not thought of. And it helps break your own typical routine to bring out new, fresh ideas to your work. Encouraging continuous learning and adaptation. So seek inspiration from new designs, trends, and industries can really encourage a growth mindset, which is really important when it comes to data visualization. It pushes you to learn new tools, new techniques, or new ways of thinking about design inspiration or data visualization specifically, sorry. By constantly being inspired, we're basically better equipped to adapt to the new and very dynamically changing data visualization environment, which we all know. connecting to data human experience. So inspiration can come from everyday experiences, can come from art, can come from culture, architecture, nature, not just within the data visualization world. These sources can really make your data visualizations more connectable on a human level to humanize it. So drawing from a human-centered design and principles enhances your emotional connection and also the connection your audience can have with the visualizations that you're creating. Second to last, boosting engagement and audience impact. So inspiration often leads to more appealing designs, which can naturally draw your audience's attention and hold their attention longer, which is something we all want. Innovative designs can really help more complex data look more digestible to users or readers, and helping them to easily understand what you're trying to present. And lastly, fostering collaboration and idea sharing. So design inspiration spark new conversations that you may not have by yourself. So having those collaborations and conversations with other people by sharing ideas and inspirations and brainstorming can really improve your work and other people's work. In addition, collaborative inspiration can lead to new approaches that you may not have thought of by yourself. So I want to pause here for a second and ask everyone, what has inspired you recently? It could be anything. It could be something specifically related to the data visualization, or it could be something else. If you could just drop something in the chat, I'll read a few of them that come up. It'd be great to know the types of things that have inspired each of us. Okay, I see here birds. Listen to an audiobook. I also see Manu is the GOAT here, which I don't agree, but that's fine. Big Book of Dashboards, I have that book, it's a great one. Blog posts, yep, I get a lot of inspiration from that. Tufts books, also great. An answer for everything. Oh, I haven't seen that one, that's good, okay. Pinterest boards, oh great, that's really relevant. Thank you for posting that, excellent. Oh, my viz, thank you, whoever wrote that there. Food apartheid viz, Tableau forums. Watching musicians, Pinterest again. Pinterest is a popular one for me. Hiking, cool, yeah. Dribble, excellent. Oh, glad someone mentioned Dribble. All right, okay, seems like we have a theme of Pinterest, a lot of different websites we can use. The data fam, Tableau Public is coming up a lot, as well as things outside of just data visualization, which is important. Some things that came to mind for me that inspired me was I came across Bloomberg's catalog of each year of all their data journalism visualizations. Like their 2023 one is amazing. I was also watching Thursday Night Football as an American football last Thursday, and there was an option to watch the version of football with live analytics, and I thought it was really cool. First time I'd ever seen that, and that kind of some ideas came to mind of visualizing things using similar ideas I'd seen while watching the game. There. See some longer posts here. Hopefully it's reading. Okay, so I mentioned we talk about some of the tools here. So identifying the chart tools are a key part of the data visualization process. Obviously, there are many tools you can use. These tools I'm going to show are not the exhaustive list. There are many more out there. If there are others out there people think of, feel free to drop them in the chat. But these are some of the ones I use the most. I'm going to first start off with actually one I created which is the Chart Suggestions Thought Starter. It's a pretty basic tool, adapted from a static visualization which already existed, but this is a Tableau interactive version that can be used to identify the chart types based off of the type of data you're working with. Now, a really great one that many of you I'm sure know, and if you don't, you should definitely check it out, which is really, really comprehensive, is Visual Vocabulary. It's excellent. It has tons of different visualizations. I use it outside of work, but we use it at work a lot to identify the best chart types based off of our user needs, what type of data we have, and so on, what type of insights we want to show. So aside from that, big picture, on Tableau Public, on the Discover page, there's Learning Tableau, which has similar tools to what I just showed you, but as well as many more from the data fam. So I definitely recommend checking them out. I think a few people have probably had visits on there. So yeah, definitely check those out for different tools and tips when it comes to chart selection. So there's ones outside of Tableau that are also helpful. The Data Viz project also has a very large catalog of visualizations to select from. So this is not specific to Tableau. It could apply to visualizations created in R, Python, D3, whatever else. But obviously, this is also relevant. This is a Tableau tug. This can be applied to Tableau also. Now, there is a chart selection tool specifically from DataVis project, which is called One Dataset 100 Visualizations, that I want to highlight because it's really cool. Just like the title says, it's one dataset, 100 visualizations on a pretty small dataset, as you can see in the bottom left corner. But they've created 100 different types of charts, which really shows like the possibilities are really endless when it comes to the types of charts you can visualize, depending on what you're trying to show to the user, what your specific insights you want to show, and generally the needs and ideas that you come up with. And lastly, a very popular one today is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is one I use sparingly for DataVis work, but I typically use it for when I have a list of ideas, I have the data already, I can drop a question into ChatGPT like, okay, based off of these criteria, based off of this data, I have this idea for a chart, does this make sense? Or simply asking like what types of charts make the most sense, and you balance those against other chart selection tools. Definitely always, limit the usage of ChatGPT for this because it can make errors, but at the same time, it's a great thing to bounce ideas off of. In addition, something I recently learned at work is that you can, if you're the type of person that has you write down a lot of notes, you have a notepad where you're constantly either sketching ideas or writing down ideas for a data visualization, you can drop those as an image right into ChatGPT, and it can spit those out to you. It can synthesize what that image. It can spit them out as text and to make it more organized, or it can provide you insights based off of what you've already put in there to provide you more information. Okay, so obviously there are more sources of inspiration outside of just charting tools. So once you have selected a chart, or even if you haven't, maybe you need more inspiration. I saw in the chat there were a lot of things that I'm going to mention now that were coming up. So I'm going to go through a few of them. The first being Tableau Public. So the Tableau Public community is a great source of inspiration. The DataFam hashtag, Makeover Monday, SportsFit Sunday are some of those I participate in the most when it comes to community projects. An excellent source of inspiration. In addition, Pinterest was mentioned quite a few times, which is great. I have a lot of Pinterest boards which have specific criteria when it comes to topics, aesthetics, chart types, dashboard types, and so on, to really catalog and categorize ideas I may have now or in the future for something. Dribble was also mentioned. I use Dribble a lot too, specifically for design. Another great source of logging ideas. Another one I recently came across was Muesli, and I have the name here. If you just type in muz.li Muesli, I learned this on the Elevate podcast. It's kind of similar to another great designers cataloging tool for getting inspiration. Really recommend checking that out. As soon as I saw it, I had tons of ideas when I saw it there, so I recommend checking that out too. But again, you can get inspiration from other sources of social media. I mean, there's Reddit, Data is Beautiful. There's X, or formerly Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as others. So definitely checking those out for inspiration is important and helpful. But you can get inspiration from other things too. Physical media, literally going to your library, opening up a design book, opening up a DataVis book, going to online blogs. Nightingale is also a great one. The Fledged Twins website is an excellent one too. And there are many other blogs out there. But aside from that, I get a lot of inspiration from things that aren't even remotely related to data visualization. I think some things were mentioned regarding nature. So I get inspiration from film, from documentaries, from TV shows, graphic design, art, even live analytics and sports that I just mentioned earlier. I know Serie A and Formula One are some of the best sports when it comes to when it comes to like cutting edge showing live analytics during a sporting event. So really getting inspiration from not just sources that are typical to data visualization, but outside of it is also a great way to get ideas. So now I want to go over some examples of behind my visuals. Who inspired some of my visuals? What specifically was it about aspects of other visualizations inspired mine, and why were they inspired by it? So I'm going to go over my county median home prices data visualization. So this is one where I got the data from the National Association of Realtors. If you've never been to that website, it has tons of data on home price data. I recommend checking it out if you're ever looking for for something like that. And here's a snapshot of the data, definitely not the complete data set, just a snapshot of it for this presentation. And you can see here we have county level data as well as price range information. And there was an additional price range for this map, this data visualization. So the first step was brainstorming and mind mapping. So I knew I wanted to take a data journalism approach, look and feel my data visualization. So then after that, I had to mind map and come up with how exactly this was all going to connect and how I was going to pull together different forms of inspiration to create this. So what was the visualization type? What was the chart type? Using tools or ideas, or specifically just looking at the data, what type of charts make the most sense for this data? Since it has geographic data and it has numerical data, a map made the most sense. What type of colors was I going to use? How could I convey the message of high prices and low prices or medium prices? Are there specific colors I could use to really get this message across to the audience looking at my data visualization? What are the font types I'm going to use? Can I use font to actually like also communicate an idea when it comes to data journalism or money, because this is about home prices? And lastly, annotations. So I know annotations are used a lot in data journalism. Annotations I often use because I know that not everyone's going to go to the interactive Tableau version of my data visualization. So I try to use annotations in my visualizations when I post it on X or I post it on LinkedIn. For those that are just going to look at the static image, can they get informative insights immediately without hovering over each specific county or legend to see some informative information about high prices, low prices, other outliers, and so on and so forth. Okay, so then I decided to come up with a map, as I said before, and this map was inspired by the Lambert map from the Alternative Map Projections Datas. There is a really great blog post from the Feathers twins that you can look up that really describes the benefit of using a Lambert map over a Mercator map, which is the standard type of map for the US in Tableau, or the default map. So some of the benefits of this map is that a Mercator map projections can be skewed the further they are from the equator, as you can see on the left. A Lambert map is a good example of mapping land masses in the mid latitude and that extend from east to west, and also reduces the Alaska effect. So states in the lower 48 states may look smaller in the Mercator map versus the Lambert map. And honestly, it just looks better, to be honest, in the Lambert map. So then adding color. I wanted to add color using a color legend identified from the Guardian. So this Guardian map I came across, I immediately was drawn to it. The colors were really vibrant and really spoke to me when it came to showing high and low prices. And I knew I wanted to create a sequential color scheme. The reason a sequential color scheme is a great way to show high and low. Low values are usually a lighter color, while higher values are usually darker colors. And as you can see here, I also place the colors directly into my Tableau to make a custom color palette. And you can do this. I'm sure many of you know how to do this, but if not, if you go to my Tableau repository, go to the preferences, open it as a text file, drop in the colors you want to use. I pull these colors directly from the colors from the Guardian, put the hex codes as custom colors there for a custom color palette, restarted Tableau, and I have my custom color palette right there ready to go. So a custom color palette was added. I colored it in the map, created a nice choropleth map. And I created a choropleth map for a few reasons. One being they're easy to understand for geographic trends. In this case, the trends showing counties, states, and regions are pretty easy to see for a user first looking at it. It shows comparative insights, so the varying color differences make the map easier to compare different geographic areas. It's more easy to convey information over a large landmass. The US is fairly large, so it's easy to see that there too. Visual impacts. For me, I felt that the colors really drew the attention to key areas. In this case, my attention is drawn to the coast, it's drawn to the West Coast. And lastly, it's generally pretty intuitive. It works for a variety of users by using color and geography in a straightforward concept. So next was the legend. So I decided to not just make a pretty standard legend. I wanted to make a legend that also provided additional insight and information. So I went with a histogram to show a summary of counties by price range from the highest to lowest of which count of the proportions that had the lowest and the highest prices. So as you can see here, we have the standard legend on the left, but you also have a histogram to show which price ranges had the most counties versus the least. Obviously, you can do an estimated guess looking at the map, but the legend provides pretty good summary insight for what this map is trying to depict. I also added some interesting uses of text or font or typeface. So here we have Source Code Pro used for the title. I chose this because Source Code Pro, when I saw it, I thought of data journalism. Courier New, because that's a similar looking font to me that also works in Tableau. It's a Tableau friendly font, so I use that anything that was created in Tableau. And to create the Source Code Pro, I use Figma. So I did mention that I like to add annotations because I understand that not everyone is going to look at my interactive version of my visualizations. And it was actually around the time I was working on this, I was watching an episode of Axios, new show on HBO. This was quite a couple years ago. And I noticed that when they were showing some key pieces of information in text, they were also highlighting text. So I wanted to do something similar in my data visualizations. So this is an example of an episode that was more recent. This was not from the episode I was watching, but it's an example of how they show some text, provide additional insight, but also highlight some key points of it. I did the same thing in my data visualization, as you can see here, by also highlighting some key points of information for users that may not look at the interactive version of the dashboard. So highlighting some very high prices in areas and highlighting some of the lowest prices in areas too. So that was it. That was my data visualization. And these are all the inspirations that inspired them. But I briefly, more quickly want to go over some other things that were inspired and who, what, and why they're inspired. So the first one would be my Women's World Cup viz. So this was from the 2023 Women's World Cup. If you haven't seen the logo, that's what inspired it. So obviously I used the colors from this logo, and the squares in the Women's World Cup logo are supposed to represent the 32 teams. The radial chart, or the radial visualization from the logo is designed from an indigenous design in New Zealand, and I wanted to keep that like cultural aspect from this logo into my data visualization because I felt it was important. And there were some benefits of using a radial chart. It's a good way of showing parts to a whole for a relationship. It utilizes space pretty well. So if this was just a longer set of stack bar charts, it may take up more space. It's a great way to compare totals to subcomponents. And lastly, it's a good use of color to enhance readability. To create the tool, I use the radial stack bar chart here, and here's the name of the author, as well as using Futura and Tableau typeface. Another one of mine that was inspired by a few things actually was my Tuskegee Airmen data visualization. And this was part of a community project, which was for the Tuskegee Airmen Challenge. And this was inspired by one pretty random thing, which is I had randomly been I saw a video, I think it was on YouTube, of a firework jellyfish. When I saw this jellyfish, I took a picture of it or screenshot of it immediately and thought at some point I'm going to incorporate this into a data visualization in some capacity. Primarily because of the color, I was really drawn to it. And I knew for this challenge, I wanted to create a data visualization that was showing in some way the propellers of a plane. I tried different things, but they really just weren't sticking or clicking. But when I thought about this jellyfish I'd seen in the past, some part of it made me think like, oh, this kind of looks like a propeller spinning in a plane. I could kind of overlap these or incorporate the two ideas for this into a visualization for this Tuskegee Airmen Challenge. Similarly, at the same time, there's another visualization from the data family, an amazing one, highly recommend checking this one out, which really showed how this could be done. And using another tool, which was the Sankey template, I created this data visualization, in addition adding the font from Futura and Baskerville typeface. A couple more. My Faces of Batman Viz. So I'm a big fan of Batman as a comic book character. And I was always wondering, like, okay, who has played Batman the most? I knew I had to limit this to just the actors that had played Batman in film, because if this was in TV, Adam West would overwhelmingly cover this visualization. And trying to think of ideas, there were different ways I could have done it. I could have just done a bar chart, could have done a donut chart. But then I came across this visualization a few years ago, which is a data art project on Face of a Nation, showing the political leaders and proportions of their face depict how long they were in leadership in various countries. And I knew that, oh, this is a perfect way to show the faces of Batman. I mean, the faces of Batman are very recognizable. For me, Christian Bale comes to mind the most when it comes to who has played Batman, and it comes across in this data visualization. So I decided to use this data visualization as my form of inspiration to create this. I also note here, although this is not necessarily aesthetic insight, I also watch a show called Cowboy Bebop, which is it's a live adaptation version of an anime. The show wasn't that good. The anime is amazing. But anyways, while watching the show, during the title card, they were highlighting people's names, the actors' names, and I decided to adapt that into my data visualizations. It doesn't really provide insight, but I just do it as my calling card in my data visualizations to every time sign off of me designing them. And here you can see I use Figma and Futura as my typeface. Okay, and the last one was my Makeover Monday challenge. I participate in Makeover Mondays now, a lot in the past, but I still love Makeover Monday. I still go back and look at old data sets and old visualizations and come up with ideas there. It's a great challenge. For those of you who have not participated, I really recommend it. I developed a lot of my skills just really working on project there. So this visualization was on the world's highest paid athletes. Now, this was inspired also by something pretty left field, but it does make sense once I explain it. And it was actually from Wes Anderson movies. Those of you who watch Wes Anderson movies, you'll know that he has a great use of color and balance in scenes and in images in his movies. And I knew I wanted to convey that because he also uses color to project some form of emotional reaction to a scene. And these colors were pulled from the movie Asteroid City. The green were the colors for the athletes who made money on the field, orange being off the field, green making the most sense since we're using the word field. Obviously, not all the athletes play on the field. A hockey player doesn't play on the field. But regardless, this is showing athletes on the field versus off the field. And the chart type is a Marimekko chart. And I came across the Marimekko chart from someone else in the data fam, from this amazing Anthony Bourdain's data visualization. When I saw this, I realized, oh, this is a perfect way to depict the type of things I want to show. So this is a great way to show 3 different forms of dimension or dimension values. So the first value percentage of the first value being the athletes making money on the field, the second value being off the field, and the width being the actual total earning, or the absolute value of what the athletes make. The benefits of the Marimekko chart also include it's easy to break down categories. In this case, it's specific athletes. It's multi-dimensional, as I said, so using the height, using the depth, and using the width. You can condense a lot of data into a small visualization pretty holistically, and it also allows the readers to look at proportions. As I said, proportions for this one are the height and the depth of the chart, which can be done with a donut chart or a bar chart, but I would say more easily with this type of chart type for this type of data set specifically. And lastly, I use the font type Figma and Futura. Okay, so you've created data visualization, you've been inspired. It's important to provide credit. Giving credit is important because it helps others learn. How can you provide credit? Adding a link to Tableau Public, inspiration field, when you're posting visualization is a great way to do it. If you're making a post on social media, tagging the author, adding their name in your post is also a way to do it. Maybe it's in a blog, tagging them in a blog or adding their name in a blog post. Or even placing their Viz link or their name directly on your source information about your name in your data visualization. I've done it a few times where there wasn't an opportunity for me to tag someone. If you do feel it's relevant to provide some form of credit, putting it directly in the Viz is also a great way to do it. Now, why is it important? Because paying it back pays it forward. So this country level Lambert spatial file, which was created in Tableau, actually inspired the alternative map projections chart that was created. Now, as you know now, this chart inspired my data visualization, which was the country home prices map. Now, from there, my chart or data visualization inspired the burden of childcare cost map, which is also an amazing data visualization. And lastly, another great one, it then went on to inspire the average fuel prices map. So overall, this really shows that paying it forward pays back and leaves a learning path for others to follow and learn from, which is really important. But sometimes we all face a creative block. I face them all the time. I can definitely say that I have more data visualizations I haven't finalized than I have actually published on Tableau Public because of creative blockages or others that have come up while creating a data visualization. So I want to pause here for a second and once again ask folks in the chat to either throw a thumbs up or raise your hand, or just put a yes in the chat to say if you have experienced any form of creative blockage. Seeing some yeses here all the time. Yep. Same here. Absolutely. Yep. We all know what's perfect. Yeah. Even Chimdi. Yeah, seems like everyone's a yes. No one's a never. That's good. Okay. Well, not good. It'd be fine if you didn't. All right. So I can imagine the reasons we have these blockages can range from struggling to find inspiration for the layouts, the color schemes. You're feeling overwhelmed because the data is too complex, or you're unsure really where to start. Unable to move forward because the visualization doesn't feel quite right or doesn't click. That happens to me a ton. Or constantly second guessing yourself for trying to reach for perfectionism that you don't necessarily need to. I know the Iron Viz theme just came out. It's entertainment, is that right? And I'm sure many are gonna face this point in which there's so many different data sources we can use, so many different ideas, but we're kind of stuck to move forward on what to do next. So this can happen to many of us, all of us, really. So how can we overcome them? I quickly want to show here my typical design thinking process. Oftentimes for me, it starts from the inspiration phase, moves on through the typical process. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. This is an adaptation of one that already exists. But for me, if I can't get past that inspiration phase, oftentimes I really struggle to complete the next steps in the phase. So how can that be done? So the first one is stopping, taking a break, doing something else. I had mentioned before, I was recently listening to a podcast on data visualization, and it mentioned that the importance of just taking a break, going for a run, go cook something, go eat something, go watch something, go work on a different project unrelated to data viz is really helpful. And I think it's helpful because for two things. One, you can come up with an idea you weren't going to think of because you were so bogged down in what you were trying to work on. But also, maybe there's something else that's affecting your ability to think of new ideas or to get inspired or find inspiration. And you really need to step back and think about maybe you're stressed about something or something else could be affecting your current blockage when it comes to your project. Try new techniques, mind mapping, sketching. So mind mapping being, okay, you have a bunch of ideas, you have inspiration, but how do they connect to each other? Can you sketch those out? And I mean literally pulling out a pen or pencil, pulling out a notepad and actually sketching out ideas. Maybe you have an iPad, you could do it there too. To sketch out ideas and make connections with ideas or inspirations that you may have. Experiment, iterate. As we all know, data visualization is not a linear process. So going back in your own inspiration, in your own data visualization process is important because as I said, it's not a linear process at all. Seeking new forms of inspiration. I mean, I do hope this presentation provided some new resources, but if not, maybe there were things left in the chat that were informative. So seeking out new sources of inspiration, going to new websites, new blogs, going to your library, stepping out, thinking about data viz inspiration in areas that you normally wouldn't think about may spark some ideas that you wouldn't already think of. And lastly, collaborating with others. So collaborating with others for their feedback is really important. And this could be colleagues, this could be other people in your field, on social media, but also sometimes just not doesn't they don't necessarily have to be in the data viz world. I mean, I get some of my feedback from people who have nothing to do with data visualization because they can provide oftentimes some really informative insights that you on your own by yourself may not come up with. So lastly, I want to end on some guiding principles. Maintaining data integrity is non-negotiable, really. So no design can really overshadow the need for accurate representations of data. And at the same time, finding harmony between aesthetic and functionality is really critical to ensure that our data remains easily interpretable while also engaging visually. So some key takeaways. We went over the definition of what data viz inspiration is, some selection tools, and also some alternative sources of inspiration. Some examples from myself of who inspired them, what specifically from other things inspired them, and why they're inspiring. We addressed the importance of providing credit and how it can pay back. And also addressing creative blocks, something it seems like we all face, but also ways we can address that. And overall, the biggest takeaway I want to say is inspiration is everywhere. The key is to open your eyes and your mind to it. All right, that's it from me. I hope this was informative. You can find my Tableau Public profile with more of my data visualizations. I can also be reached on X and on LinkedIn. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much, Damola, for such a great session. And I think one of the things best I saw was like every code and everything. You had also mentioned where it is coming from, the source. That was really inspiring to see all the trail that you mentioned. That I think that will be my takeaway, kind of takeaway, like how the trail follows. Like it's not just about giving back the inspiration or putting that name over there, but how the trail goes. That was kind of inspiring to see how you think around that. So really great session. And I think I'll go back, and there's so many things to consume over there in this short session. So thank you so much for doing this. So we have lots of questions. I'll hand over to
You're very
Chimdi.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. First question. This would be port. Yeah, so this talk, okay, yes. So Annabelle's already answered. This will be posted to YouTube. We have a question from Aranksa. I hope I said that properly. Are you more of a type of person to go deep in Tableau for the designing process of a dashboard, or do you use another tool like Figma or Adobe?
Yeah. Yeah, so it really depends. For work, if I'm making more of a business style dashboard, we do use Figma for mockups and just general layout because it's just much faster to throw in some pre-rendered charts and filters and text or filler text into a Figma mockup than it is to create something in Tableau with data behind it. So for business dashboards, sparingly. For my personal projects, which a lot of the ones you see on Tableau Public, I use Figma a bit more for the design aspect, but I do use Tableau a lot. I try to use Tableau. I definitely use Tableau more, but when it comes to the mockups and when things like pulling in images or pulling in interesting text types that aren't Tableau friendly, using Figma is something I use.
Awesome. So the answer is yes, he does use some of these. Thanks for sharing that. Another question from John is basically curious, Damola. How did you get to where you are so quickly with your Tableau journey? You know, in his experience, he started in 2019. He got some training in 2020. He started using the tool, and he feels that he's not as advanced, um, based on the timeline. So any kind of tips you have for how to quickly amp up or ramp up the skills would be helpful here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll give a very brief background about myself. So I wanted to be a graphic designer many, many years ago. My dad was a graphic designer. He convinced me not to do it for various reasons. So I didn't go down that path. I became a monitoring and evaluation specialist doing humanitarian work. And that was primarily my background was in that and statistics and so on. But I always felt that data visualization was my passion. It was the one thing I cared about in the work the most. And around 2020, 2021 was when I discovered the Tableau community. And really, as I said before, participating in community projects, like when I had more time during the COVID times, I was participating in Makeover Monday at least every other week, which was a great source of just literally just looking at, okay, I created this visualization. How did other people do it? How did Chimney do it? How did Prasan do it? How did Animal do it? You know, oh, how can I pull their ideas into mine? You know, opening up their workbooks and seeing like, oh, that's how they created that interesting interaction and the visualization. So really participating in whichever community projects interest you the most is I think the best way to develop your skills. Obviously, participating in trainings is also a great source to develop your skills there too.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I totally second that. I'd say like repetition, and especially at the initial stages, doing a lot of reps really is how you're going to get to that, upper level. And then once you get there, you can sort of slow down a little bit because, your process is a bit more solid. You're thinking of how to approach things, you've kind of experimented a bit. So practice, practice, practice for sure. All right, let's do maybe one or two more questions. And then Damola, if you don't mind, you can potentially help us just like type out some responses in the chat. So I'll do one very quickly. How long does your entire Viz process take from start to finish? This is from, hopefully this is said properly, Ligia or Ligia? Yeah.
Okay, so this one, it depends. If it's a Makeover Monday project, I try to do it within a week and sometimes a day or two more or less. If it's a personal project, I mean, it could take anywhere from a week to a month because I'm pulling it together, tons of different ideas to make something really work. Because I oftentimes get to a point where it's almost ready, but there's just something about it that I'm just not getting, like, it's not providing the insight I want it to provide to the user, or if it requires someone to take an extra step to really understand what I'm trying to show, I typically go back to make adjustments before it's ready. So yeah, it can really range between a week to a month depending on where I'm at in the process.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So I guess the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 week, maybe 1 month, who knows? Awesome. So I think that's about 3 or 4 more, I guess. So if you don't mind, Damola, just
Sure.
Please help us in the chat there, and we will move on to our next speaker just to save some time here. Thanks for the questions, guys. Very, very helpful.
One thing, Damola, someone suggests in the chat that you should do like a visualization with a Spider-Man.
Spider-Man fans in the chat. Perfect. Awesome. So our next speaker, another great professional here, Mr. Dennis Cao. His Twitter is on here, so you can always connect with him, tweet him, ask him questions, connect. And his Tableau journey. As a social work professor, Dennis has been doing statistical analysis and mapping for about 15 years, but he first discovered Tableau in 2020. I feel like 2020 is like the year where everyone just kind of gravitated towards this tool, which is interesting. In the past 3.5 years, he has created over 200 visualizations. That's just amazing, including a lot of maps, as you can tell. If you doubt, go to his profile, you'll see. He has been named a visionary in the past year, and he also serves as a Tableau Public ambassador for the past 2 years. Of course, we're familiar, but again, congrats, Dennis, I guess. Yeah, he's in Canada, and we like to count how many visionaries we have in Canada. So we were happy to welcome him as part of this. Fun fact about Dennis, he enjoys watching apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic movies, especially those that have zombies in them. He also enjoys binging on K-dramas, especially those that have zombies in them. And he also enjoys traveling and eating out with his family, especially, but not with zombies for this one, because, you know. So, yeah, if you got any recommendations for zombie movies, you can share with Dennis. And his talk is going to be on the case for adding a GIS to enhance your maps in Tableau. So, basically, if you've seen the Tableau mapping functionality, you can look at that, and then you can look at Dennis's maps, and you can tell that there's definitely something else going on. And I believe this is what he's here to show us today. So I'm going to pass it over to Dennis to give us the goodies today.
Great. Hello, everybody. I do want to make sure that's kind of a time check. Are we okay with time?
We are. We will run until the end of time, so don't
Okay.
worry.
Okay. All right.
Take your
Cool.
time.
All right. Great. Let me share my screen really quick. Hello, everybody. It's absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. It's also kind of intimidating to be among such great folks that I find inspiration in. Damola's map, if you haven't seen it, the food apartheid, the one that he did in Washington, D.C., was one that actually, one of the 2 or 3 maps that kind of turned me on to Tableau in the very first place. And so I think it's just an honor to be here presenting along with him. So my talk is about making the case of why you might want to add a GIS software to your tool belt. And I use GIS pretty regularly to kind of enhance my map designs in Tableau. And so I'm just going to kind of describe that process, that workflow. I'm going to demo a couple of things in QGIS, which is the software that I use. And I have a bunch planned, but I'll just go until my time runs out. Okay. So everybody can see my screen, I assume, so because nobody has hollered. So let me just move on. A little bit more about me. I'm originally from Los Angeles. We moved to Ottawa about 6 years ago in 2018. I'm a husband, a father of 2. One of our kids just started university, and our daughter is still in elementary school. I've done GIS mapping for about 15 years. Using a variety of tools. I started, my training was in ArcGIS, ArcMap, and I recently turned to QGIS because it's free and open source and available in Macs. But I discovered Tableau about 4 years ago, and today I visualize most of my maps in Tableau, but I still use GIS, like I said, as part of the workflow, and I'll describe that. And I'm very honored to be a visionary this past year, as well as a public ambassador for 3 years. So this is just a quick snapshot of my Tableau public mapping journey. Once I discovered Tableau, I fell in love, like many others, really loved the ease of use, but also the capacity to be able to design. And for that reason, I've done a lot of kind of Tableau stuff, visualizations, just because I wanted to do the practice. I'm trying to incorporate it into my coursework and teaching and training social work students who are generally averse to data and statistics and research, trying to get them interested in data and data storytelling. And Tableau is one of the tools that I thought would be really good in that space. These 2 maps that I've created are actually kind of nice bookends. They're both Makeover Mondays. The first one was my first Tableau Public viz, and of course it included a map. And this is one I just did. And then the one in August, I just did Makeover Monday, looking at the venues in Paris, the Olympics. And you know, I've been pleasantly surprised as well as blown away about how much my skill set and my the design and kind of the creative side that I really didn't know I had at first, but Tableau has kind of opened up that creative side and artistic side, and visiting and mapping has now become kind of a creative outlet for me, and which is why I think you see a lot of maps put out by myself, just because it just serves as a creative outlet. But I think part of it is also kind of a lesson learned is, you know, once you find a tool that really works for you, like I've been doing GIS mapping for 15 years, using QGIS, ArcGIS, and other tools, but Tableau really just became kind of my tool that really opened up this whole new side of me. And so finding that right tool, I think, is you know, is part of that journey, and really kind of altered my professional and personal trajectory once I discovered Tableau. So we're talking about Tableau. This is a Tableau user group, but why might you want to use a GIS software and in your workflow? So GIS and what I'll try to demonstrate is a software that's specialized in dealing with the nuances and the unique kind of characteristics of spatial data. And so because it's specialized and there's a long history of GIS software, I think a lot of the workflow, a lot of the processes, a lot of the functionality is just streamlined in a GIS tool, and which is why I continue to use GIS, especially when I'm prepping the data. I'm also a bit ambivalent about base maps. Base maps are great, and you know, and let me just give you one caveat. I'm not in the data analytics or business intelligence space. I'm in the academic space, so I think time is a little free-flowing, maybe a little slower. Deadlines are kind of like, you know, pseudo deadlines. And so I totally understand the need for creating visualizations and maps in quickly to help make decisions in a timely manner. And so I'm not in that space. And so what I'm kind of, so base maps for some purposes might be helpful. For me, base maps are, you know, I started using the base maps and it's great, I think, but ultimately I wanted more control over the design process. So when you use a base map and you put stuff on it, the base map essentially, in my mind, becomes an image, and you can't alter it unless you go to, in Tableau's case, go to Mapbox and create a custom map and then bring it into Tableau. For me, in terms of my process and how the way I work, I really wanted to be able to have control over the data that I brought in, as well as how it looks in comparison to the roads, to the buildings, to the other kind of elements in the base map, and be able to design everything kind of all at once. And so for me, it was a lot about control over that design process. And that's, I think, why I have some mixed feelings about base maps. Another reason is there's a free and open source software called QGIS that you can use across platform, across Macs or PCs, right? It's totally free. So the question would be, why not, right? It's available and it makes dealing with spatial data so much easier. Why not use a GIS? And why not add a GIS software to your tool belt? So this is generally my workflow. So oftentimes when I'm dealing with spatial data, I'll use GIS in the data prep and data creation stage. And then in Tableau, I'll do kind of the analysis, the design, the final visualization of the map, along with other charts and text and things like that. So I think it's akin to how folks use Tableau Prep, Alteryx, maybe some of the other tools that people use, Excel, Google Sheets, to prep the data. And then once it's prepped, you can feed it into Tableau to do the analysis and visualization. And so I think it's kind of akin to that. I think it's probably akin to how folks use Figma to create images and things like that, and then bring them into Tableau. And so GIS, I kind of use GIS as that kind of tool to prep the data, to create data as well, which I'll show you a couple cases, and then ultimately bring it all into Tableau for the final visualization, analysis, and design. And so I'm going to show you some of the things here that you can do with the GIS tool. So data prep, you can quickly visualize and view the spatial data, shape files. You can pull in CSV files and put them on a map. And so being able to quickly look at the stuff. Tableau, I think, is getting better with the map layers and bringing things in and stuff like that. But you'll see soon enough that in a GIS tool, it's just so much faster to look at stuff and kind of manipulate things and kind of zoom in, zoom out, things like that. It's just easier. And so I use it often to kind of look at what the spatial data looks like on a map. And then I'll go through some prep kind of processes, like maybe editing the data, filtering the data, focusing or honing in on the data that I specifically need for a particular map. And there's this concept called a process called clipping, and I'll show you in a minute, where you clip the data to exactly the dimensions that you need, as opposed to bringing in the entire spatial data file into Tableau. There's also things that I do in terms of creating data, where you can create shapes like rectangles or circles. You can create a grid. You can create buffers. So now Tableau has the capacity to do buffers around points as well as lines. Currently, there's no capacity, as far as I know, to do a buffer around a polygon. And so I'll show you an example of that. And then alternative projection is just kind of like an important issue for me, just to make sure that we're accurately depicting the world and our geographic area. So I'll try to show you a bunch of this. Okay, so if you're interested, I have, give me a second here. I have a bunch of links. So if you're interested in following along, I do have the data that I'm going to be using today. You can access it in a Google Drive. I also have a couple of links here that might be helpful in terms of where I get the data. Sarah Battersley projection hack blog is kind of a quintessential one in my tool belt that I often use. But I will. So feel free to follow along or access the data anytime. I'll probably keep it there for a few months so that it's available. All right. Okay. All right. So let me go to QGIS. So this is what the QGIS interface looks like. It's like most other GIS tools. It's also kind of similar to Tableau, right? So you have the view here, and then as you add layers, they'll show up here in the left-hand column or section. All right, and so I'm just going to start adding some data. So I have this is the same exact data that's in the Google Drive. So I'm going to add the map of California, and so you'll see automatically once I dragged in the shapefile, it just automatically visualizes it, and so I can in real time see what exactly how it looks, the spatial data, and then see whether it worked before I kind of bring it into Tableau. I'm going to add the cities of communities of LA, like so. And so you can zoom in. So this is LA County. These are the cities. You can also look at, okay, what is this place right here? This is LA City, of course. And so I'm going to go through kind of a process right now to kind of drill down, select, filter, things like that, just to kind of replicate some of the things that I do on a regular basis. And I'll try to go slowly because I think sometimes the cursor may not follow in real time when it on Bevy or on Zoom. And I'm also going to add the roads of Southern California here, okay, like so. Okay, and you'll notice that it automatically adds all the 3 layers. The layers are all listed here. You can move them around just like in Tableau, but you'll notice that the process is just faster, smoother, more seamless, right? Bringing in the data, looking at the data. And so if you just wanted to check out some data, see what it looks like before bringing it in Tableau, I think QGIS or another GIS tool is a great way to do that. You can also alter the projection. So Tableau is kind of wedded. It's pretty much wedded to the Mercator projection unless you do a hack. QGIS and other tools will automatically project it based on the first layer. And so the first layer may have been something else, another projection. But once you add that layer, it will create the workbook based on that projection. And everything you add to every additional layer that you add to QGIS, it will automatically reproject it based on that projection. But whenever I deal with spatial data before going to Tableau, I want to change it to Mercator just because that's pretty much what Tableau can handle right now. And you'll notice the shape of everything kind of changed a little bit. And that's because I just changed the projection to Mercator. Okay, all right. Let me know if I'm going too fast too. So I apologize. I get a little excited about this stuff. And okay. So one of the things I wanted to do is somehow turn this off. Okay. So one of the things I'll do, I'm just going to walk through a process where I drill down to a specific place and try to select different things and create kind of different additional layers based on this data. So for example, let me turn off the roads for now. So for example, if I wanted to focus in on the city of Long Beach, which is right here, there's a couple of things I can do. Like let's say I'm doing a project, want to map Long Beach, and I just need the stuff in Long Beach, right? In my Tableau workbook. I don't need all this other stuff, right? I can do a couple things to filter the data, get it prepped up, create new shape files in order to get into to Tableau, and it'll obviously streamline the process once you get into Tableau. And so there's a couple things I can do. I can select simply by pointing with the cursor. So I'm using this select feature right here. And so I know Long Beach is this area right here. And you'll notice that it turns yellow, right? And what I can do, once it's selected, you'll notice I can open the attribute table. And you'll notice that it actually is selected as well in the attribute table. So you can also use the attribute table to select as well. So for example, if I wanted to select LA, you'll notice as I'm selecting different options, rows, Malibu, Manhattan Beach, Maywood, Monrovia, etc. You'll notice that the selected area changes as I'm selecting the table. And so you can do it that way as well. But for now, I'm going to select Long Beach. Okay. There's another way to do that. So let me clear the selection. You can also select by field. So if you knew what the fields were and you wanted specifically Long Beach, you can type in Long Beach here and then select the feature, and it works the same exact way. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is create a layer that's just Long Beach, the city boundaries. So I'm going to copy the features. So I have it selected, that particular map layer selected. I'm going to go to edit, copy the features, and then paste the feature. And I'm just going to do it as a temporary file. I'm going to call this Long Beach. And then now I have a layer that's Long Beach that I can zoom in like that. Okay. All right. Now let's say I just wanted the roads that are in Long Beach. So the roads are for Southern California that I pulled from the OpenStreetMap site. And let's say I just wanted the roads in Long Beach. One thing I can do is I can do what's called a clip. Okay. And what a clip is it'll take whatever the input layer is, in this case, roads, and then clip it by this second layer, the overlay layer. And so I'm going to select the layer I just created, Long Beach. Okay. So I'm clipping the road layer by the layer, the Long Beach layer. And so what's going to happen is I'm just going to get the roads that are within the boundaries of Long Beach. So if I run that, okay, you'll notice, and I'm going to turn off the roads now. You'll notice now, I think hopefully you can see that. Now I have just the roads that are within the Long Beach boundary. And then I can also save this as a shapefile, bring it into Tableau, and it's all set. Okay. You can also, so I'm going to save that, but I'm going to turn it off. You can also select by location. So there's an option here called Select by Location. And I want to select all the roads that intersect with Long Beach. Okay. And what will happen is, hopefully it works out. So you'll notice that now all the roads that intersect somehow with the Long Beach boundaries are now selected, and I can create, I can copy this and then create another layer. And these are Long Beach roads, for example. Okay. Now you might notice that let me turn up change it to black so you can see. You'll notice in some cases, because I select the select, there's some of the roads kind of extend beyond the boundaries, and that's because this for example, this line right here, let's zoom in a bit here. This line right here is actually part of this line here. And so it's just the same feature, the same row. And so it just included that. And so you notice when I select on this, you'll notice that the yellow, I don't know if you can see that, the yellow extends into, this is the part that is within the Long Beach boundaries, and this is the part of the same line that extends beyond the boundaries. Okay, so those are kind of two different ways that you can get at roads within Long Beach. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Let me go back a bit. Okay, but either way, you can save this as a file. So I'm going to save Long Beach as a shapefile. So these are Long Beach roads. Then you can bring it into Tableau. And then now you have the shapefile that is perfect to what you want, right? Like so. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, okay. One last kind of filtering kind of process I wanted to show. Okay. So another thing that I do often, right? Let me clear out everything. So it looks like this. Okay. So I know Long Beach is here, right? But I don't want just the ones that are specific to within or specifically within the Long Beach boundary. I want kind of the surrounding kind of roads as well. And so one thing that I've done, and you probably have seen this, is I'll draw like a circle and create a circular map or a square map. surrounding a specific city or or area. And so one thing that you can do is you can actually create new layers, create new data. And so in this case, I'm going to create a rectangle. So I'm going to just create a temporary one. I'm going to call this rectangle. And then it's a polygon, right? And I'm going to push OK. Now, it adds a layer, but I haven't added anything to it. And so one of the things you can do is you can draw a rectangle. So using the digitizing and shape digitizing, you can create different shapes. So here's lines, curved lines, circles, etc. And so in this case, I'm going to create a rectangle. And so there's the rectangle. So you click, you drag your cursor, and then you right click to complete the square. And so now I have a square, a rectangle that is now a shapefile. I can save this rectangle as a shapefile. So I'm going to save this. Okay, and what this is going to do is now you have a rectangle that is geographically bounded to this geographic space. And so when you add it to Tableau, oops. So now here, so I have now two data sources here. I'm going to add the rectangle. So now you have a rectangle that is exactly where you placed it in QGIS. And you can use this as an outline. I've used it to create extent maps or inset maps and things like that. And so that's just another kind of cool thing that you can do. Okay. But one of the things that you can do with, now that this is a layer, now I can use this layer to clip the roads, right? And so we can do the same clipping. So now I'm going to clip roads with the rectangle. So obviously I haven't done a good job naming all of these. So let me remove a couple things so it's not that confusing. But now let me take out everything else. Now I have a layer of road maps that are clipped exactly to that rectangle, like so. And then now I can bring that into Tableau, and that's just the data that I need to create my map. Okay. So that's kind of like some of the ways that I might filter the data, take a quick look, see what's there, and a couple ways by selecting or clipping. I might filter the data so that it's ready to just be visualized in Tableau. Okay, it makes things a lot easier. Okay, all right. So far, so good. Okay, so I have a couple more things I wanted to share, and these things are kind of around the more, let's create some spatial data then that we can use then for our maps in Tableau, right? So it's new data. Okay, so one of the things that you can do is you can create a grid. Okay, and a grid might be used for several things. I'll show you a couple examples where I've used the grid, but in this case, let me create a rectangle grid. I'm going to use currently what I'm viewing right now as the extent of the grid, and you can define how big the grids are. And so in this case, let me do 1 kilometer, like so. Okay. And so when I do that, you'll notice that it creates a grid right away. Let me bring that underneath Long Beach, like so. Okay. And one of the things that I could do now is I can select by location, which I did already. All the grid, all the cells within the grid that intersect with the city of Long Beach. Okay. And hopefully this works. And so what happens is now you notice that all the cells within the grid that intersect some way in Long Beach are now selected. Okay. And then I can copy this. I can copy this, the features, and then paste just the selected cells as another layer. Okay. Like that. And now this is another piece, new spatial data that you can now save as a shapefile, add it to your map for various reasons. And I have a couple of examples that I'll show you. So I created this viz a while back in 2021 where it just mimics the Thomas Guide. For those who you aren't familiar with the Thomas Guide, if you lived in LA or California, you're probably familiar with the Thomas Guide. It's just basically a road atlas that came out every year of all the streets and how to navigate and in LA or other parts of California. And it's basically become, it was the Bible at the time when we were dependent on paper maps. And I created, it has to reconnect. So I created kind of a grid using the same method of LA County. And this kind of mimics kind of the Thomas Brother Guide, the look and things like that. I created this in Mapbox just to try to mimic the style of the Thomas Brothers Guide. But here's the grid. And now you can click a grid. And then you notice that now the map on the right will change based on where the grid is. And so that's just one example of how a grid might be useful. Okay. Another example is I did a point grid here looking at a 15-minute city here in Ottawa. And each of these points, there's a buffer. Sorry, it's reconnecting. There's a buffer around a 15-minute buffer around each of these points. And so you can click on, I guess the goal of this was you can click on anywhere in the city and then it'll create a 15-minute buffer and identify all the amenities there. And so if I click on the ones here in the middle, you'll notice that this map changes, and these are kind of the restaurants, the number of restaurants, fast foods, and things like that. And so that was my effort to kind of visualize what a 15-minute city in Ottawa might look like. Okay. And then another example might be if you ever wanted to create a Lego map, a grid might be useful in that as well. One thing I also wanted to do, which is just kind of a cool little thing. It's not, probably not, let me use this one. Not something you might do regularly, but I just wanted to show you kind of the possibilities. These things are just basically kind of points, lines, and vector and polygons, right? And so even though they're kind of linked to a geographic space, in QGIS, you can actually move them geographically. Obviously, obviously violating geographic laws and things like that, but you can actually move them in order to kind of create interesting kind of visualizations. So for example, I have the roads here. No, let me actually do this. This might be easier to see. So I have the boundaries of Long Beach here. And one of the things you can do is there's a plugin called, I think, the Shape tool. And one of the things you can do is actually move the whole vector in any which way you want by however far you want it and things like that. So for example, I'm going to move the Long Beach boundaries. Let's just say maybe 0.1 kilometers, and then at an angle of 135. And what I'm trying to do, and if it works out, is create a drop shadow effect. You all see that? So you'll notice, I have the original shapefile, but I altered that shapefile just slightly at an angle, 0.1 kilometers down a bit, to try to create a drop shadow effect. And what you can do now is bring both of these shapefiles into Tableau and create this drop shadow in the same worksheet, right? And so I think that's just something cool. I don't know how useful it is, but I thought that was kind of cool. Something cool you can do. Okay. The last thing I want to show is, go back to the data. I want to show you buffers, at least for a polygon. So I'm going to bring in a map of Lake Ontario, one of the Great Lakes, just south of here in Ottawa. You'll notice that this is a polygon, but actually there's two polygons because it's divided by this boundary, which is the US versus Canada. And so one of the things that I can do is if I want to get rid of that and merge the two polygons together, there's a tool to do that. So I can dissolve these layers. And so the Lake of Ontario, I'm going to dissolve it, meaning I want all the connecting polygons to basically dissolve into each other and create one just massive polygon, okay? And so I just did that there. And then one of the things I can do is I can do a negative buffer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create some water lines. Kind of if you've ever seen the old antiquated kind of maps, they often have like these kind of little like ripple effects. And I personally think it's kind of cool. But you don't really see that so much in kind of new maps or digital maps. But and in this case, I am going to alter it. Let me see, where did my notes go? I don't remember. I want to do like a distance of let's do 0.01, but it'll be negative, right? So I'm trying to create inner buffers. Okay, so that worked. So you see now I have a buffered layer here, and you'll notice that it's just slightly inside the other layer. So the original one is the brown and the gray is the new layer. And I can continue doing that. So let me select this again, and I'll create another buffer just slightly inside that. And of course it didn't work. Oh no, it's because it's below. So there you go. So you can kind of see that effect there, right? And I can create as many as I want, right? But I think it kind of adds a cool little fact that I don't know if people really care about this anymore, but I think, so this is a visualization, a map that I created where I did these buffers and then tried to show kind of these water lines, kind of the ripple effect. I think you can see the buffers a little clearer if I go to map 2, and you'll notice, right? So you can see kind of the buffers here. And I think it just adds a kind of a cool effect like that. Okay. All right. This was, and I'll just show a couple more examples just to wrap up. So this is an example. This was my Paris map, which is going to take a while because it's a big file. Okay, sorry. So this is an example where I used the rectangle to create and clip the roads and the water and other elements to create kind of this little inset map to basically have a zoomed in effect, a zoomed in look at Paris as well. I did that for Marseille as well here. And then in this one, I used a circle, and these are buffers where now you can select the buffers and then showcase the various areas. And I used the circle and then the clipping process in order to create these little maps of each of the little areas, like so. All right. So I think I am done. Thank you so much.
It was very cool, Dennis. I learned all your trick now.
Yeah, great talk for sure. Okay, let's see. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Questions, what do we have for today? Okay, so we've got one from Nathaniel. And it says, you use circular buffers in your Ottawa map to identify amenities in the circle. And the question is, can you use the polygon shapefile similarly to identify points that are in or out of the polygon?
I'm trying to understand the question. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I can look at it.
Okay,
too.
so yeah, so basically it says you use the circular buffers in the Ottawa map to identify what was inside of the circle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it wants to know, can you use the shapefile, the polygon shapefile, similarly to identify what's in and out of the polygon in the same way that you can use the circle to identify what's in and out of it?
I would say probably yes, because anything's possible, right? With QGIS. No, I'm just kidding. I think I kind of have to understand, like, so the polygon is it defined by, like, would that
like, I guess the shapefile is what it's being called. Or I guess if it's not as clear, I guess Nathaniel, would you mind maybe, I guess, connecting directly? Or
yeah,
something?
I'm happy. I'm also happy to, like, if Nathaniel, you want to clarify what you meant, I'm happy to respond here too. I'll hang around.
Okay.
As well.
Awesome. Thanks for that. We have another one from Rachel. At a minimum, for your shapefiles, you need a latitude and longitude field for them to come into Tableau, correct? And she says that hers didn't seem to come in as nicely as what you showed.
Well, first of all, it takes skill. No, I'm just kidding. No, not at all. I'm just kidding. Okay. The shapefile, like, so in Tableau as well as QGIS, all you really need to worry about is the one, like, so a shapefile is made up of 5, 6, 7, 8 different files. Don't worry about this as long as you keep them together all under the same name. All you have to worry about is pulling in the file that has the SHP extension, which is the shapefile extension. When you bring that in, either QGIS or Tableau, it'll add it as a data source. Tableau will recognize it. And then all you need to do is add the geometry field. It'll automatically create a geometry field. You pull that into your worksheet and it should work. Because the shapefiles don't really have a latitude, longitude field because they're shapefiles. Tableau will recognize them as shapefiles. And so what you'll have is a geometry field, which then you can just pull directly into the worksheet. I hope that helps.
Yes. So I guess the answer is it comes in as a shapefile, which is also recognizable by Tableau.
Right.
Awesome. So we have another one from Anna, which is, do these GIS functions and tools exist within Tableau Prep currently?
As far as I know, Tableau Prep has a hard time dealing with spatial data. And so I think people turn to Alteryx, right? To often do kind of some spatial kind of data prep. As far as I know, no. So, which is why I often use QGIS, which is just specialized data software for spatial data. And hopefully what one of the main things I hope I demonstrated was how fast a tool like QGIS is in just putting stuff on a map, right? Like you drag it in, it's mapped. And then once you can zoom in, zoom out, you can move it, you can select, you can, hopefully some of those processes I went through mainly showed that how kind of quick and easy it is to do that in a tool like GIS. Obviously, there's a learning curve to kind of figure things out, but Tableau, and let me talk about why I like visualizing in Tableau. I like visualizing Tableau because first you start with kind of an empty canvas, right? And you can kind of design as you want, right? There's some limitations in the mapping functionality, but I try to kind of address some of those gaps by creating data in the QGIS and pull it into Tableau. But I love it because of the interactivity that you can easily add to a map. I love it because of how good it is in creating all the other visualizations that you might want, like bar charts, line charts, etc., that then you can add to a visualization that includes a map. And so that's why I ultimately do a lot of my final visualization in Tableau. But a lot of the data prep, it's kind of difficult in Tableau/Tableau prep. And so I that's why I use a GIS tool, which is and maybe to answer the question directly, it's separate. It's a separate tool.
I guess the answer for that is it's currently not in Tableau prep. Alteryx is an alternative, and you can just bring stuff into Tableau and hopefully maneuver in there as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. So this one is from Montangel, hopefully Monteangel or Angel. What resources do you recommend for further knowledge on integrating ArcGIS with Tableau?
In my mind, ArcGIS is a similar. I would probably use ArcGIS in a similar way that I use QGIS. I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, Esri puts out a lot of resources. There's a lot of just like there's a lot of resources in Tableau. There's a lot of resources for ArcGIS as well as QGIS, and so I can't name anything specific for ArcGIS because I haven't used ArcGIS in a while. But there's a free MOOC, I forgot what it stands for, the free class, right? Online class that they put out, Esri puts out maybe twice a year, that gets you introduced to ArcGIS, GIS online, and then gets you mapping and stuff like that. And it's called Introduction to Cartography or something like that. And I think it's a great course that you can take and get introduced to ArcGIS. But once you get comfortable with the tool, it's a matter of kind of understanding what you need in order to bring into Tableau at this point, right? Like what kind of shape the data needs to be to bring into Tableau so that you can visualize in Tableau. And so that, part of that is just understanding both tools well enough in order to kind of go back and forth.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so let's do maybe two more. Let's see here. Okay, so I guess this one is from Allison, and I think someone also posted a link to help, but I will still ask it in case you've got a simple answer. So essentially, she says that they're trying to figure out today why their field maps using zip codes had circles. And she also shares that some community posts say that it could be because they are postal boxes, but she does know that they are not postal boxes. And so she's wondering if you had any idea of why those field maps had circles in them.
Why they presented as circles on the map? Is that the question?
Sounds like what she's
Okay.
what she's saying. So basically, like, how like you put the map in and it's supposed to like fill out, but sometimes they can show up as dots, I guess. I think that's what she's asking.
It's a good
and
question.
It's like supposed to be a zip code data in there, I guess.
Yeah. I think in Tableau, so I don't use geographic rows that often because as you notice, I start from scratch, right? Like I bring in my own data. So geographic rows, I think when Tableau is able to recognize them, when you bring something in and the chart type is automatic, I think the default is it's a circle, right? And then if you change the chart type to a map, then like even if it was the states and you brought it in, if the chart type was automatic, it would be circles. And then you change it to a map, then the states will fill out, right? So I don't know if that's the answer to that. I don't know. Like I'm happy to look at anything. Like if you all want to contact me separately with your specific issues, I'm happy to, entertain any questions related to this.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So I guess, Allison, if you need to, if this doesn't really help answer, maybe you can share some resources with Dennis to look at, and he can provide some
happy to. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. Let me see. Do we have anything? One more. Oh, okay. I found one from Tony. As someone who uses ArcGIS Pro and AGOL extensively and has started to use Tableau, he's asking, do you have any suggested learning pathways or courses for the mapping, specifically for the mapping functionality in Tableau to learn that and, get.
Yeah. I would say first, it's kind of similar, especially once they introduced map layers a couple years ago. Like you can just pull in the shape files directly and then treat them as separate data sources. You don't have to worry about the data modeling anymore. You just pull them in as separate, connect to them as separate data sources, and then you can add as many map layers as you want and kind of play with it, right? So I think it's a lot easier now than figuring out the data model and how to structure spatial data like into a single data set, right? So it's a lot easier with map layers now. And so I would say play with it. I think that's how I got kind of comfortable with Tableau, just playing with it, struggling with it, learning, making mistakes and things like that. There's a couple of people that you might want to look up, and they've done some writing and maybe some tutorials, but mainly writing. I don't watch too many tutorials, like videos, but mainly writing that helped me kind of connect the dots in transitioning to Tableau. So Mark Reed has done some writing on how to work with map layers, geospatial analysis in Tableau. So look up Mark Reed, Mark with a C. Sarah Battersby, whose name was also tossed around earlier. She used to work at Tableau and has done a lot of writing. She comes from the GIS world, worked at Tableau now, and is now back in the GIS world. And so she's done a lot of writing on connecting some of the dots between GIS and Tableau. So some of her readings I think would be helpful as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And Dennis, if you don't mind, I think there are about 3 more sort of at the bottom there. So if you don't mind, maybe just helping us hop in to address those.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Great talk and great answers. All right. So we have our last but not least speaker coming up. So we have Ryan here with us today, and a bit about Ryan's Tableau journey. So Ryan's a former head of data visualization and BI at Apple. So definitely got his hands dirty there. He brought his thought leadership and approach integrates his prior roles in analytics, applied psychology, systems thinking, software development, project management, and user experience design. So, Ryan has a bunch of expertise in different things, which he brings together in terms of analytics. He's an expert in BI of professional services, and his work was published in the landmark. So the big book of dashboards, written by Steve Wexler, Andy Codegrave, and a few other people. Ryan's work was featured in there, which is fantastic. And he is co-inventor of a BI patent on calculating and operationalizing potential. sounds like a very solid thing there that's been invented. So I don't know if maybe you're going to talk more about that, Ryan, but that sounds very interesting. Fun fact about Ryan is that he reads around 150 books every year. That is just something else. Very impressive. And the local librarians recognize his voice without him needing to say his name. So that's a pretty cool fact. Lots of reading. Definitely sounds like a really, really, really interesting. Sounds like you have a lot of interests, Ryan. So if you want to share more about that, you can. Today's talk is definitely another one that sort of lines in with what we've seen so far. It's called Reporting Strategy and the Drama of Dark Mode Dashboards. Very interesting. Interesting. So I guess color-wise, sometimes there's always this debate about like dark mode versus light mode. So I think as far as reporting goes, Ryan's going to give us some talks and exposures on, I guess, what we can think through with some of these decisions there. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to pass it over to Ryan. And so over to you for the goodies. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thanks for the introduction. Let's see. Share my window. All right. Hello, I'm Ryan Gensel. Today, I'm going to speak to you about reporting strategy. But before I do, I want to thank the organizers of this event and the giants of the field on whose shoulders we stand. Let me provide a brief background so you know where I'm coming from. I was a former head of data visualization and business intelligence at Apple, where I focus on the launch and optimization of wallet features like Apple Pay, Apple Card, Apple Savings, Apple Pay Later, and Apple Cash. Prior to Apple, I worked as an operations consultant for hundreds of advertising agencies, and using that experience, I helped design and develop the platform Agency Story. A component of that was featured in the Big Book of Dashboards and subsequently used by Tableau for eye tracking research. Before that, I've had roles as a UX designer, software developer, project manager, and systems architect. Everything in this talk is my own opinion and doesn't represent the views of any past employer or client. So that's where I've been. What am I doing now? I've just launched Thinking Interface Design, a consulting firm that focuses on analytics interfaces. What distinguishes analytics interfaces is that they're often a place where we spend time thinking about what we're seeing and not seeing. In our minds, we're superimposing structures or relations onto the screen. It's not a transactional flow we're trying to complete, but a series of interactions where we learn and discover patterns. This conflicts with some of the preconceived notions about UX, that we're trying to move people through a funnel of actions as fast as possible to get to a desired and measurable result. Most professionals are on their way to becoming data people, as software capabilities and economic forces are leading them there. I think the future of data communication is recording and visualizing a chain of thought as we do analysis. That traceability of the cognitive process is what helps us understand the branching and then explain to others our conclusion. It's this convergence of human and machine capability that we need to externalize and synchronize. These interfaces are unique, and I anticipate we're going to need more of them and a lot better ones in the future. While the industry is advancing artificial intelligence, I'm investing in human intelligence and a potentially screenless future where analytics becomes invisible. I'm preparing for that and helping other forward-looking companies do the same. A secondary component of thinking interface design is support for the individual practitioner outside of employer-controlled dynamic. Humans in analytical roles are subjected to pressures to be accurate, fast, confident, influential, and familiar with embryonic technologies. With the speed of this discipline and the continuous disruption of social contracts, we are facing a leadership debt. But this isn't a malicious plot. It's the adolescence of a craft. How many of you know retired software developers? How many of you know retired data scientists? How many of you know retired Tableau developers? The accelerating pace of change means we need to question our beliefs more readily than before. However, many individuals within a hierarchy are passing the prevailing wisdom down at a singular speed, while the market is changing much faster. That whiplash effect is what you're feeling. You go into a one-on-one that offers neither sympathy nor solutions because the reality that you're experiencing is different from the world that your manager or manager's manager sees. Gray area responsibilities have created a mid-office that is unrecognized by the front or back office teams. You might spend your nights and weekends thinking about work, but it seems like there is no resolution coming to the frustration you feel, which leads me to a guiding quote. The most powerful gift you can give someone is a story that explains their pain. Today, we'll talk about the building blocks of stories, mental models, and specifically the abstraction process that compresses them into a grammar of knowledge. The economist Hayek talks about the limits of any one individual's knowledge. Let me illustrate using a graph. On the y-axis is knowledge, and on the x-axis is historical time. We as a society continue to create new knowledge every passing year. We develop efficiencies around that knowledge that allow us to make even greater leaps forward. But we also accumulate knowledge. This compounds into a greater sum. What does that mean for an individual? It means historically that an individual had more capacity to understand a greater proportion of society's accumulated knowledge. And over time, that proportion diminishes. No individual, however competent, can know any major fraction of the knowledge accumulated in a free society over time. We are shackled with either the chains of ignorance or the humility of interdependence. So how does this play out in the marketplace of skills? This continuum represents the skills of an individual and their ratio split between technical expertise and domain expertise. In the center, they're split 50-50. Let's call that a generalist. They can either adapt to learning more about the domain or more about techniques. Since over time the world is creating new knowledge, the generalist has to maintain their position, adding to both their technical understanding as well as their domain acumen. There are two additional forces at work. Innovation is pushing people down towards being a generalist because it's making technique more accessible through technology, commoditizing skill sets. That's why we all know how to type or edit a spreadsheet. These are not the skills of an expert anymore. What we consider expert skills now could be data modeling or implementing machine learning. However, there's a threshold in which software is already bridging that gap. Practitioner tool sets are nibbling at the heels of expert functions, while expert tools are also accelerating into more complex territory. Why pay an expert when you can do it yourself cheaper with similar results? Why do it yourself when you can add it to the responsibilities of junior staff you already have? Why use junior staff when you can automate it? From a macroeconomic perspective, it's just good business. Simultaneous to this, business domains are also optimizing, finding and exploiting new efficiencies. What limits the depth of domain expertise is really the market's perceived value of its utility. There's a saturation point at which an industry can't absorb more expertise because it's not practical to apply it, or that the organization doesn't have the headspace for more senior leadership. You have to wait for people to leave or retire for a spot to open because the function itself isn't growing. This competitive equilibrium perpetuates a mass anxiety while also motivating individuals to distinguish themselves. So instead of everyone hugging this oscillating pattern, staying in the gravity of a generalist, you have individuals spinning off, increasing their depth at the cost of either their technical breadth or their domain niche. For a period of time, these individuals are highly valued in the market, distinguished experts. But because the market is moving, they either have to continue to build their knowledge or regress into less economically lucrative roles. So let's talk about you. You're a data worker. You can either be positioned horizontally or vertically. What I mean by that is whether you're a data worker first and a domain expert second, or vice versa. If you work vertically, you have a responsibility to the domain that you work in, and your competency is in what the business produces or how it produces it. If you work horizontally, you are an expert in the techniques and systems of data, serving multiple verticals. Your team also has a scale. Are you doing many tasks end to end? Or are you a specialist that, due to the size of the organization, only does a subset of the projects and works cooperatively with other groups? This division of labor has its costs and benefits. And finally, what industry are you in? Is it highly regulated? What is the style of working culture? Is it formal or casual? All the ways that we can either be similar or different. But I think the most important distinction is here, splitting data worker into its component, the technician, the tool user, and the domain expert, the context specialist. However, it's your understanding how to connect the two that gives you your power. That skill is abstraction, and it's how we as a society have accumulated so much knowledge. Abstraction is going from detail to generalization. There are two basic forms this can take. Taxonomies are the most explicit, defined as a hierarchy. Small things fit into a category. Categories can themselves be categorized. For example, in biology, you have many species and different levels of categorization. A house cat, a lion, a cow, and a dolphin are all mammals. However, a cow is not a carnivore, but a house cat and a lion are both felines. Ontologies, however, are not categorical. They are conceptual. They're the relationship between entities, a web of ideas that are encapsulated. For example, an engine. An engine transforms fuel into kinetic energy. There are different types of engines, and those engines all have different assembly of parts. You do not have to be an expert in engines to use one. So abstraction gives us a way to encode very complicated things into simpler to communicate chunks. However, the risk, especially with ontologies, is that the way I package up the concept constitutes different components than the way you do, or that because I'm familiar with the packaging or labeling, that I also understand the details and inner workings. This hiding of granularity can also be a feature to reduce distraction. In this room, specifically gathered to discuss a software, we're likely familiar with abstraction as it relates to software development. We're moving our cursor around Tableau's graphical interface. We edit calculations in a dialog box. However, most of us are not editing the XML file directly, and none of us are modifying the binary files. We take for granted this application is running on an operating system and the countless other subsystems that are required to manifest a workspace where we focus on our own task. This layering of abstraction levels is important because it only exposes us to the information that's relevant to our context. The same is true for a business, or another way to phrase it, an organization. How disciplines are abstracted, what becomes centralized, and what stays decentralized. Marketing doesn't have to do the work of finance, and neither do the work of manufacturing, because this division of labor provides specificity and focus. It also gives the managers of these enterprises a language to operate the business without laboring over the details. We are making sense of the world through mental models we create to understand it. Do we actually experience reality, or just the mental models we've created to describe it? Two mental models are often used to describe the way a company organizes their staff: a hierarchical pyramid or a network. However, I find a different analogy more useful: a topography, because it implies a third dimension of depth. With a flat representation, we can see the network and the proximity to other nodes, maybe disciplines, maybe divisions. But it's the elevation that gives us a sense of the hierarchy. And it's this combination of elevation and proximity that should determine the language and level of abstraction that we use to communicate effectively. When you're collaborating with Mountain Business, you use the language of the domain. When you're communicating to a level of hierarchy, peaks, you use the language of power. And this is why business intelligence is an n-dimensional problem space, because you're using technology to talk about the business to different levels of hierarchy. Let me unpack this a little. Let's say you're analyzing the processes within a division. When your focus is constrained to that division, you will make decisions to optimize locally within that division. However, if you're an executive looking across many divisions, you're not just looking at local strategy of optimization. You're looking for a global optimum. Their role is really to decide where inefficiencies will live at the cost of any singular division. So business intelligence has to reconcile this paradox of perspective. Let me illustrate this with a graph. The y-axis is the conceptual level of abstraction, and the x-axis is the complexity of an interface. Conceptual abstraction can be likened to a symbolic density. Whatever we're seeing is rolled up into either the parentage of a taxonomy or as a label representing a broader web of ideas. This is different from interface complexity, a combination of visual and temporal density. Visual density is the amount of pixels on a neutral background. A lo-fi way to think of this is the ink ratio. When you have a temporal density, this means there's a time gap between information is revealed. When an interface requires interaction, there's a latency, a delay. There are 3 archetypes that occupy zones in this dynamic based on their preferred level of abstraction. Executives are the first zone we'll add. As the policy dictating overseers of an organization, their preferred level of abstraction is very high because their vantage point requires them to zoom out to see a larger area. However, the interface complexity is often preferred to be very low. Taking a step towards the middle in both axes, we have a business or product operators. These individuals have more patience and training to interact with an application. The conceptual abstraction is reduced because they're often working in a business unit or functional capacity. And since their umbrella of responsibility is smaller, the granularity in which they work is also contracted. Let's jump now to the archetype that operates at the lowest relative level of conceptual abstraction, the analyst. The instrumentation is often capturing individual events and units, representing a concrete activity that is happening in the physical world. In addition, the analyst is using tools that have high interface complexity due to either the volume of records or the expert level of understanding of the controls, whether they are code-oriented in a notebook or click-oriented on a canvas. Since we have placed our archetypes in their zones, let's now add the types of interfaces or data presentation layers. The first is a summary, maybe a few sentences or paragraphs. This verbal or written text can be an introduction or a conclusion, but its brevity is key. It has to utilize abstraction to compress the message into quickly digested and possibly actionable statements. The next are slides in the application of your choice. Keynote, PowerPoint, whatever. The idea is we go deeper than a summary and spread the story across a narrative arc in time, using visuals to drive towards a conclusion or discussion. The midpoint of abstraction is the dashboard, because it's aggregating up to a more relatable level, and conceptually the choice and orientation of the elements is implying a narrative relationship. Stepping down is the spreadsheet, less conceptually abstract because the cell values can be traced back to their dependencies, but more technically complex because that tracing requires the granularity of the aggregated data points to be nested in the workbook. Finally, we have a direct query to the data, resulting in an array. Not only does someone have to understand query statement syntax and the data models of the sources, they have to parse the results in a tabular view. What's the significance of having dashboards in the center of this spectrum? They're most likely to be used in the wrong circumstance because they appear to offer the best of both worlds, summary and detail. But these other mediums exist for a specific reason and predate dashboards in history, which means the organizational structures were often influenced by the rituals of the mediums of communication. Summaries and slides are often presented during a scheduled slot in the week of the participants. This act of theater is not unlike the pageantry of a royal court appearance, where the layers of hierarchy are made obvious. Not only that, the attendance could be limited to the hierarchical level, which means that the individuals that could speak to the detail are excluded, and the responsibility of the representative is to have gathered a summary that fit the level of detail that the participants could understand. So there's an adaptation layer that goes under-recognized to convert information from one medium to another. Notice I didn't say translation, because adaptation is not 1-to-1. It's more like 10-to-1 or 100-to-1 in compressing information from both a conceptual level and within an interface constrained to less visual density. Not only that, the reason that the information is being communicated is often because it's sending a message loaded with a request or contorted to influence in preparation for a later request. The communication strategy is not just to inform, it's also to convince, which switches the role of data communication from being objective to having an objective. The difference between archetypes is the type of hidden context they have. An executive has organizational context, a business operator has industry context, and an analyst has technical context. When an analyst prepares something for an executive audience, they're abstracting the technical context and assuming they understand the conceptual context on which the executive would find useful. Let's now look within dashboards to the patterns and anti-patterns. Dashboards as map. A map is a symbolic representation of relationships. It is generally an abstraction that hides some detail while emphasizing others. Elements of this type can organize information to form a conceptual model that explores entity connections, directional flows, or transitional states. Examples of this can be profit and loss statements, taxonomies, and funnels. They are intended to educate the viewer by showing the whole and examining what parts are worth focusing on within it, around it, or because of it. The power of a dashboard that serves as a map can be normalizing or establishing a way to look at the business and socializing the factors that contribute to performance changing. Dashboards as gaps. When we talk about gaps in business, we're usually referring to alternative realities and what-if scenarios, with the most obvious question being why a gap exists. Dashboards of this type layer some algorithm on the data to calculate the difference between an expected value, like a forecast, plan, or average, and the actual value. Examples of this could be anomaly detection, business reviews, comparisons between peers, or one that provides controls to test different values in a calculated whole, like margin, utilization, employee count. Understanding a business through its gaps connects what could be done with the reality of what's happening. It also allows a dashboard to bake in a strong opinion about what capabilities an organization has to alter their future instead of following the current trajectory. By emphasizing the gaps, we pay attention to the opportunities that have the most impact. It's like focusing on profit instead of top-line revenue. While revenue is an important signal, it's often the profit gap that decimates businesses. By understanding the gaps in your organization and the levers that affect the size of those gaps, you start having deeper discussions about actions that should be taken and reconciling misalignments about people's conceptions of the organization. Dashboards as apps. If you think of many software applications, they encapsulate a transactional flow, a bi-directional exchange of inputs and outputs. Dashboards fit cleanly within this ecosystem. When you can connect an interaction with the data to a subsequent change in state of some entity or trigger the next action, you've created a closed loop system where a viewer can stay in context. Coupling the review of information to the direct capabilities of the operator, you create a powerful mechanism by reducing the delay and inefficiencies of offline or interstitial activities that cost time and effort. By digitizing the workflow, you reduce the latency of action. Dashboards as traps. The last type is really a catch-all for the anti-patterns of dashboard design and management, when effort would better be spent elsewhere instead of forcing the medium against the preferences of its archetype. Since we now have an understanding of both data presentation layers and dashboard patterns, we can start to inventory them into what I call a reporting strategy. A reporting strategy is a map that connects individuals within your organization to the data that most serves their mission or responsibility. What's interesting about this relationship is that on the far sides are the concrete entities. These are the real things at a low level of abstraction, individuals and data. One step in, however, are abstracted layers. The mission is a grouping that unites individual into a common purpose, and the interface unites data into a singular layer for consumption. So from the left to the center, there's a strategic abstraction from a business perspective, but from the right to the center, there's a strategic abstraction from a technical perspective. Individuals can connect to multiple missions, but probably have a priority weighting to their responsibility for it. A mission can have multiple interfaces, and an interface can have multiple dependencies. What this diagram illustrates is that the connection between a mission and an interface is joining two already abstract layers to each other. In an organization that hasn't clearly articulated the mission and capabilities of their people, they're going to struggle with what interface to use to empower those individuals to act. And this is because data is often used for two things in an organization, either optics or optimization. Optics can merely be surfacing the data or providing a map to understanding, but it doesn't really put it into action. However, there's value in controlling it because there's an exclusivity to the access. So there's political motivation to create interfaces and rituals around big numbers going up or down, without much depth or proposals to make them go in a different direction. It's an open secret that many teams are happy to be messengers of any news if it gets them visibility. It's not that the data availability is a bad strategy. I think data should flow freely to build intuition and data-informed habits. However, more reports without context or action tend to dilute energy that could be spent on optimization. Optimization is understanding the system of inputs that contribute to the value of the outputs. It's discovering the direct causal relationships and building a program that motivates behavior change based on the feedback loop. The difficult piece here is finding true causal relationships. Most of the time we find a web of causality, so we don't have confidence in operationalizing around this strategy. The second issue is getting multiple disciplines to work collaboratively, because the data often crosses domains into defended territory, where teams are happy to take others' data, but reluctant to share theirs. That's why I associate a mission with the capabilities of the individual who can affect change. Business development has a relationship with customers. Product can change the product. Operations has a relationship with our strategic partners. An optimization program might include all of them together, leveraging their capability. However, many data presentation layers are oriented around a singular team, or a product line, or a region, or the platform that's collecting the data, or even a singular executive. The consequence of organizing around those entities is they often don't do anything. Even though they're providing visibility, they're checking the box and creating busy work that masquerades as important work. This confusion is compounded when those interfaces are also built by a separate, more technical team, relying on the business to understand their own dynamics, while only needing to provide the technical know-how of the tooling and schema of the data. It's this fantasy that perpetuates the pain and failure around most business intelligence. Here's what people seem to not understand about data work. It's about performance and controlling the narrative about performance. It's about power. It's a technical component that requires it to be a separate discipline. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the room. Context is the most expensive thing in an organization. And the bigger the scale of the organization, the more expensive and less effective communication becomes. However, there's an idea that there can be an economy of scale around the function of communication. And there is, if it wasn't defended so fiercely. There's so much territorialism because of the fear of disintermediation. That is a reduction of intermediaries between producers and consumers in the supply chain. Think cutting out the middleman, being excluded. The fear of disintermediation is so strong that the business resists sharing context because they might lose control. This might not be an overt or even conscious reaction. I think it's this insecurity that is fueling so many conflicting strategies and creating confusion, because we're seeing the symptoms in our organization, and we might even talk to our colleagues about it. But because there's so little acknowledgement and it continues to get worse, we feel that we're the naive ones. If you're in an environment with a healthy culture or a small enough team, you might not detect them. However, once you start getting bigger, these problems compound. Let's go through each archetype and identify some of the strategies and counter strategies. Starting in the middle of the organization with the business or product team members. The fear of disintermediation here is that the technical team will automate a portion of their jobs or bypass their input to deliver information directly to executives. I see three main symptoms, but fortunately they all respond to the same medicine. The first is design by proxy. This means that they are designing something for someone else and need your help, but because they don't want to directly involve the stakeholder, and because of schedules, busyness, or pride, the most relevant stakeholder for this deliverable is not available until it will be revealed at launch. This is almost certainly going to fail. The next is spreadsheet-only consumption. You hear that this team and their leadership are special, that they don't respond to any data visualization, and they need the data accessible in a table and don't want to create new tickets to request data. They just want direct access like they used to have when they worked at wherever, whenever. They have certain templates that the leadership likes, and they witnessed someone try to use a chart in the past and they were insulted, or they showed a presentation and were asked a question, but because the presentation was an analysis, they didn't have the raw data around to answer that specific question quickly enough and were embarrassed. Or a dashboard they relied on once didn't update and they had to wait all day for the number. The last one for this is a ritual, generally a meeting that has an agenda with a template format for content. The idea of opening a dashboard or changing presenters just won't work for their setting. It will seem unpolished. They need to be able to practice their presentation word for word and send the slides and speaking notes around before the meeting in case anyone has any feedback. But even with a set of slides, you get a series of Goldilocks all looking for their version of perfect, adding their own perspective, often in conflict with each other. The feedback confuses style with substance. So you're splitting the narrative arc across new slides, labeling axes, and adding footnotes. All three of these symptoms share a common theme: rigidity, inflexibility to what are considered to be the rules of the culture. While knowing procedure is important, the goal should be to deliver disproportionate value. Often, putting together the optics reporting is delegated to junior team members that lack the confidence or familiarity with the business to try anything new. So you're being steamrolled into a solution by an aggressive senior team member that doesn't value your expertise. The counter strategy should be co-design. What I mean by co-design is a shared sense of ownership over the process and the outcome. Most business dashboards aren't a consumer good. They aren't going out to thousands of users. They're being used by a handful. They're more of a personal item that reflect the identity of the creator. How is this different than how you're workshopping now or doing requirement gathering? Co-design starts with establishing the pretense that you can't design for someone else. You can only design with them, and that they are part author. You need them to assert their authority and take ownership of what is their opinion and what is the objective truth. Your role as a designer is to leverage your understanding of established patterns and the capabilities of the technology to guide them. Since what is being built is not for you to use, that it's important that what is built is useful to the consumer, which might not be them, and design with that in mind. You must be able to explain that the design process is often more valuable of an experience than the resulting artifact that's created. That all the alternatives and discussions that take place are context to the decisions that were made. So a presentation of the finished product isn't going to compress the history of its development. That by the time we present it, it will feel obvious to us. And if we've done a good enough job, that it will look obvious to everyone. Because that's what design is. It's discovering that through 1,000 alternatives, 1,000 left turns, 1,000 failures, that you got to success by discovering that which was already there. You just had to find it by going through all the wrong ways to do it. That learning to think together and externalize that thinking is the key to establishing shared mental models and trust. You have to articulate your position and maintain your elevation, or otherwise your stakeholders will take advantage of you. Which leads me to the next archetype. Let's call this the technical archetype, because we want to include analysts and engineers. Technical team members are often defensive about being bypassed, because their exclusion in the early phases of a discussion are pivotal to their understanding of the problem. And they're more likely to only receive the specifications in a transactional arrangement later, instead of as an equal partner in a relationship. They're also sensitive to being excluded from the presentation of the deliverable, because often the messenger is a receiver of the praise. When they are strategically absent from the presentation, their effort and expertise is being utilized, but the attribution is hidden. The first symptom here is an overemphasis on prioritization. The amount of desired work should always exceed the capacity of the team charged with doing it, thus forcing a planning and prioritization process that delivers the most value with an optimal amount of effort. However, in technology, the work can be novel with complex unknowns. So there's this pressure to reduce risk by estimating high. However, high risk work can also have high reward in either impact, visibility, or skill development. So the technical team takes three approaches. First, they share the responsibility for prioritization with the business, providing estimates for the work. Then they apply engineering standardization for work types to increase efficiency. Then they decide what work they're going to do anyway, despite the first two. And here's why. The business is going to prioritize the minimum amount of depth work from the technical team to get what they need. Then they're going to adapt it for their purpose in the data presentation layer that they control. So to counter that, the technical team splits strategies depending if they're more engineering oriented or more data science oriented. The engineering-oriented team will develop a platform layer with a standardized output, and the flexibility will be constrained by the features they've developed so far. The data science-oriented team will try to raise the sophistication of the analysis and assign a face to the project to elevate their visibility. Both teams will pressure their people to put in more hours than they originally estimated. And because there's more work than just this assignment, it compounds. What this looks like for an engineering-oriented team is accumulating significant technical debt and trying to spread that across other projects like attacks. It also means they're going to attempt to use cheaper development resources because they figure once the work is standardized, they just need to crank it out. For the data science team, the faces they're trying to develop regress into doing optics reporting and data fetching. But because they want a senior perspective liaising with the business team, they either have to hire more senior staff or trust that the junior team members can elevate a discussion. Since including technical staff has the perception of slowing things down and increasing costs, there's competition for headcount between the business teams and the technical teams. The business team wants information directly accessible without an intermediary. The engineering team says they need to hire developers to create an abstraction layer to make that possible. And the data science team says you're not going to get value out of your data investment unless you understand what the data can and cannot tell you. Our job in business intelligence is to reduce the cost of making decisions and not necessarily to reduce the cost of business intelligence. I'm going to say that again. Our job in business intelligence is to reduce the cost of making decisions and not necessarily reduce the cost of business intelligence. Reporting strategy is a way to counter the fears of disintermediation because it makes visible the network of reporting and communication while implying the effort to build and maintain all of these artifacts. Until you can shift resolutions and zoom out to see a bigger landscape, individual agendas will continue to win. However, neither adapting a monolithic platform or instituting a strict governance program is the solution. It's just changing the problem. They're both inserting a gatekeeper instead of reconciling the perverse incentives that keep these teams in conflict. Which leads me to the last archetype, executives. There's this quote that goes something like, executives don't control customers, they control promotions. So the strategy that executives use to avoid disintermediation is the organizational structure. What kind of disintermediation would the executives fear? They're already near the top of the hierarchy. Executives are trying to keep a poker face because every decision they make affects those below them. And in every action and word, their staff is reading deep into the motivation, trying to interpret a game theory so they can compete with each other for their leader's attention. There are 3 puppet strings executives use to leverage this competitive infighting: rank, headcount, and visibility to leadership. A positive movement in any direction can be seen as a reinforcement of behavior. Analytics is built on the premise of objectivity, and its scope is an examination of the holistic performance of a business. So the separation between front office and back office is evaporating. Analytics is following the footsteps of IT, marketing, and finance as it penetrates the C-suite. However, this generation of existing leadership isn't ready to grant them full access. They still want to sit analytics at the kid table because the other disciplines perceive analytics as a threat that is taking an increasingly larger slice of the pie. The counter strategy to this is to illustrate how to increase the size of the pie, not shrink the slices. It's the relationships that you build during co-design and the awareness from reporting strategy that gives you access to the business of the process grain. The process grain are the activities in the value chain that each discipline is contributing. With access, you're able to make connections and test hypotheses across domains. Because of your self-declared ignorance in a business's domain, there's less vigilance to exclude you, since you've made your business partner the expert guide in their domain. However, by abstracting the knowledge you've gained during that experience, you're able to reframe and repurpose it across every new challenge. Don't get discouraged by the status game and withhold your expertise. That's a short-term solution to a longer-term integrity crisis. Your integrity is a magnet that will attract the right opportunities. In conclusion, the impact that analytics can have on the operations of a business is fascinating, but guarded by humans with a logical sense of being disintermediated. There's a temptation to only work from the data backwards towards the business, controlling availability of tools, data, or expertise. But that will limit access and knowledge your domain partners are willing to share with you. Don't let your critic energy stop you from building relationships. Don't let the idea that if you can't fix everything, you can't fix anything. That's not true. Incremental improvement happens through paying attention to things that are working and investing in them. Most people are intimidated by anything that doesn't feel like immediate success, but it could be preparing you for that next leap forward. Every person you interact with is going through an internal conflict, and it's easy to extrapolate a story that puts you in competition with them. But if you give them a language to externalize their mental models, you become a designer of designers. When you look back at your life, it's not what you made, it's what you made possible for others. I believe in you. If this resonated with you, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I invite you to continue the conversation. We have a lot to learn from each other.
Awesome. This is very, very insightful. Lots of helpful information with respect to how to think about designing, the purpose of designing, stakeholders, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really great. I know myself, I'm definitely going to be watching this video again. And so, lots of great nuggets today. So we're over time. A lot of people have already left, but like I said, this will be posted on YouTube. So they should definitely still be able to catch this again. We do have one simple question, so I'll just ask it, where it just wants to know, what Gen I tools do you use for your research, Ryan?
Let's see. So Gen AI tools for research? I haven't really been good at it. I played around with a little bit, but Wikipedia has and reading and writing lots of notes and rereading those notes. So it's really between my writing, my reading, and my note taking, and then combining it. I haven't incorporated Gen AI, and I'm partially reluctant to do so, and then I'm partially really excited to do it. And so I hope to take more time to do it because there's been so much inspiration that's already been shared on it.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks for that. Perfect. All right. So it looks like we're good on questions. And so to the heroes that are here, we're just going to do a quick outro and wish you a great rest of your day. So I'll pass it back to Prasanth to take us home.
Thank you so much, Himdi, and thank you so much, Ryan. Almost it felt like listening to a podcast and great presentation and how it was delivered. I think I'm certainly also going back and I'll take away some of the ideas from there. That was really good how it was portrayed. Especially, I would like to show it to my decision makers or stakeholders at work. That can be insightful for them as well. Okay, so we learned a lot today from, I think the key takeaways were take feedback, also take inspiration and give it back as well. The trade of like inspiration, you don't know how much it will live and how much shelf life it has. I think that's the important part of the story. And then also coming to maps and GIS, how you can leverage it and use it to customize maps, which might be a bit tough with Tableau. So how you can leverage that. And finally, the insightful thoughts of how you can put it all together, how you should bring the design, how you should bring the perspective. Because designing or building a visualization, it's not just about skills. It's also about how you think about it. That's the very important part of it. So I think it was a great day of learning. And thank you so much for being here, guys. And see you next month. We again have a very great session coming up in October. And I look forward to seeing you all. So please scan the QR code, or you can go to our tableau.baby.com analytics Tableau user group page and register from there as well. And that's it. That's it for today. Hope you're having a great day and enjoy the evening. For us who are from the eastern part of the world, good night.
Good evening. Bye.
Good morning, good evening, good night, everyone.
Yeah.